look at that. People are already coming in and commenting in the channel without me having to say anything. That's awesome. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, The Power of Relationships, Strategies for Building, Growing, and Incentivizing Your Carrier Network. I'm Chris Arredondo, co-founder and VP of Customer Success here at Cargo Chief. And joining me today, I've got Sean McGillicuddy, CRO. Oh, I got that right? Yeah?
Yep, you got that right.
It's always a mouthful there. CRO over at TIE Software. We're thrilled to have you join us, man, as we get into transforming your carrier network through relationships and techniques to help you get more freight on the board. As we get into the agenda, again, here, I'd like to encourage everyone to share any experiences you've had with today's topic, whether it's a story from, I don't know, maybe winning business by having more options, or even tactics that you're doing today that could shed some light for some of the folks here that are joining us on a better way to build that carrier, broker, and shipper relationship. We love use cases and real situations, so feel free to also include any questions or comments, and we'll try to fit them in as we move along here through the webinar today. So the agenda, what are we going to talk about? First, we're going to start with some methods, sort of, and what to think about when you're building a process to build those carrier relationships to help you guys win more business. Then understanding your carrier's needs and wants. It's really difficult to do. It's not easy. If it was, everyone would do it. Going to come together with more options, and what that means is a stronger pull usually means more opportunities that you could be winning rather than them still sitting in your inbox in that loss column. Then coming back full circle to drive carrier reuse. So that's really what we're going to attack today. We're not really going to get into any product, just real strategies, techniques, tactics, theories, and things like that, and what we hear from our customers. So Sean, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit, a little bit about yourself, Ty, and kind of what's going on.
Yeah, well, I guess just to start, for anybody who doesn't know, TIE Software is a TMS provider for freight brokers, focusing exclusively on LTL and full truckload brokers. So we do both of those at a very high level, and so that's what we're about. But that's not necessarily trying to pitch anything today. We were, when you and I talked about setting this up, we wanted to focus on, I guess, just the process for anybody who's struggling with building out the carrier network and the loyalty and things like that. And one of the things that as we kind of researched what we would talk about today, I was asking a lot of brokers, how they go about defining the process, and it seems like everybody, what we'll talk about will end up being things that may seem a little obvious, but they're in execution, they're not necessarily always done. So for example, I would love to create, if you're looking to create a carrier loyalty program, kind of starts with like, well, who should be on the list of carriers, right? So you have to identify them, and then you have to give your team an easy way to actually reference that list. Cause that seems to be a big missing component. Is you're in a brokerage, everything seems to be going well, but you're trying to establish better relationships with carriers, and you're telling your team that, but are you giving them the ability to easily see, who you're trying to work with, and an easy way to get, quotes from them, right?
Yeah. Some of the things that, as we sort of put our heads together and started talking about what we're going to talk about today, we're thinking of some of the challenges and a lot of those pain points that we've all seen and heard. If you've booked freight before, or if you've sold software, you sort of hear this from a lot of people. One is like, how do they limit load boards? How do they limit that reliance on that? Load boards are great, but it's just the last 45 years or so, it's been that primary channel, and it's really difficult to get out of that transactional world. Then it's sort of like another challenge, finding consistent options. Like how do you use a list to go find those options, then improve your coverage, all coming down to carrier reuse. The big thing that we often hear is like, I'll ask people, what are they doing today? And to tell me about your coverage process. And it's usually this and a lot of this. And it's like, how do you get away from that and, make it easy to where we're not just putting an application, putting another piece of software in front of somebody or another list, but really refining and redefining their workflow. I guess, Sean, how does that resonate with what you hear?
Yeah. I mean, I think as an industry, we're lucky that the load boards exist, right? When you're just hustling, you're trying to get stuff done, you're developing a new lane with some new clients. It's great that they're there. But I think everybody would agree that like you don't necessarily want the process to be like we post everything on the load boards. And what I see is unfortunately for a lot of companies that just is the case. Like it's just kind of the easiest path for for the teams. So if you don't give them the right tools, they're going to do that, right? So what we've been working with companies a lot on, and what information we've been trying to put out is like I said, first identify the list, right? And it may be in multiple representatives' heads, right? But then your mid-level guys don't necessarily have a way to know. I mean, there might be some documentation somewhere, but like make it more uniform. Make it, actually take the time out to go through, who you should be using on each lane. We both obviously have softwares that make this part of it easier, but even if you're not going to use like a software like ours, like find a way to make it easy to see who are your top 5 carriers on every lane that you frequently run. Yeah. And then what should the process look like otherwise? And then you have to make it visible, because too many times I see folks that already know this, right? Like, I'm not saying anything that's not pretty obvious, but it's the execution of it that ends up being the failure, because ops managers will tell their carrier reps to do this. But then like you come to them, they're like, hey, why didn't you go to ABC Trucking Company for that when I told you to do that? And you're like, they're like, dude, I got like 10 screens open. I'm just doing the best I can. Like, I got the load covered, right? We're making money on it, right? Yeah. So, and at the end of the day, that is what's important. Get it covered, take care of the customer. But if your aim is to build strong relationships with trucking companies, you got to go back to the same ones again and again. So you can say it all day, but if you don't give your team an easy way to identify the carriers you want them with on that lane, what's the rating for that carrier? What do you expect from that carrier? What have you already worked out as an agreement with them? What kind of pricing should we, and then, so if you don't make it easy for them to go to it, I've heard from brokers where they're trying to push their relationships with carriers, and then they'll call carriers that they know that they were trying to develop a relationship with. And they go, well, hey man, we haven't really done much with you. And the trucking company's like, well, dude, I quoted you like 17 times last week and you guys didn't give me a single load. Like, I can't keep spinning my wheels over here. And oftentimes the ops manager doesn't even have the visibility to know that was the case, right? Because it just lived in somebody's inbox. So we don't even know where we're missing opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Sean was talking there, we plugged in a question here. Back in my day, I was blessed to start at Robinson, and we had a bomb TMS proprietary and whatnot, but I still had a spreadsheet. And that was my process. Like, my process was building my spreadsheet. And, to ask everybody here, do you have a process today to help you guys identify what carriers you should be working with? And feel free to elaborate on anything you guys are doing, because there's a lot of different tactics that people use. I mean, yes, spreadsheets are probably that base foundation, but I mean, what? Like, you have a spreadsheet, but okay, and somebody told me to go follow up with these carriers, but then what? Like, are you gonna what does that look like after that? So I guess to that point, let's build on top of that with that process and strategy for really carrier expansion and starting that relationship. That's really the first thing to look at, is how do you start it and why are you going to do that? Like, what's the goal? What's the outcome you're looking for? And then how are you going to get there? It's, it doesn't have to be top notch in the beginning. You should always continue to try to refine the bottleneck when you're getting stuck somewhere. Like, maybe it's just you're lacking at carrier reuse, or you have all these carriers that are coming to you, but you never have a strategy to go back to them. Think back on what's the outcome you're trying to achieve. Is it a better load to carry ratio? Is it better margin, better relationships, lower new carriers added, or less reliance on load boards? Whatever it is, think of that outcome that you're trying to get to, and constantly refine that strategy that you're looking at. I think the importance, you sort of mentioned this, the importance of relationships have been talked about forever, but it's really only those that are doing something about it that are really seeing those results. Here, at this change of the year at the end of 23, coming into 24, we heard a lot of people trying to use these operational strategies to support their sales growth. And it's like, yes, there's carrier lists and things like that, but try to not think of it as just a task or just something to do to keep me busy to go do something because that's what that manager told me. It's really like, again, coming back to like, what are you going to do with those relationships? Are you going to improve your service, get more freight on the board, whatever it is? So I guess, Sean, to pass it back to you, what are some steps you would say that companies could take to really start building that strong foundation, whether it's a list or what are some other things that they can do to look at the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an easy way to like, so we already talked about identifying, right? So you identify the carriers, you know who your favorites are, right? So then if you have an easy way to make sure that you know when they were quoting, when they quoted you and when you booked with them, right? So you should pay attention to that. And, you know, your ratio between how often they're sending you a quote versus how many you actually book with them, right? And I know there's several softwares that make this a lot easier, but at its base, like that's a stat you should be looking at, because if you say you're trying to build a relationship with a carrier and they're quoting you and you're only booking a small percentage with them, it may be because their price is too high, right? Maybe you're getting better pricing and you have 5 carriers that you like working with on that lane. But to me, I think if you want to build good relationships, you owe them a phone call and let them know why. Like, hey, we're only booking about 20% of the time with you when you quote us, but it's because you're X percent higher, and I think you need that visibility, because if it's relationships we're looking for, which I think is smart, then the data helps you have an honest conversation about why. And I think in a partnership, in a true partnership, you should be able to be that transparent, right? Like, this is why we're not booking with you right now. We want to do more with you, but is there any way we can work out because I'm only going to be able to give you about 20% of these, like, continuously, which if that's okay with you, okay. Like, I want to maintain a good relationship with you. Right.
Yeah. Some of the things that, we have a common customer here, Concept, they use, they're on tie, and great customer for us too. One of the things that we had in our automation layer was sort of like timestamps. So it's looking at, you're sort of talking about like capturing data in one place to be able to act on it. And yes, rates and lanes and things like that. But also when you think of traditionally, what people will do is they'll call a carrier, they'll send them an email. But what's the timeline between when that action happens? First, when that load gets built, when that action happens, then when you end up booking that load. Like, where's all that gray space happening? Like, what's happening in there when carriers are probably seeing your email or they got your text or whatever it is, but they didn't hop on it immediately. When you have like some more information to tell you to take these conversations from, hey, do you have a truck, to like, hey, I've got 20 of these. This is what we can do to help get you guys further in that pool or further up the rink. But also, like, hey, I sent you this load. It took 7,000 minutes for you to reply. What happened? Like, you're my top guy. Like, you told me that you wanted these 20 loads, and I was willing to give those to you, but like, it took you forever to get back to me, and I either had to move it or just somebody else took your spot. And like, having that information to get back to your carriers, often you'll find out information that, like, it's going to open that up a lot more to where it's not just like, no, I can't take it. Well, why? Right? Like, is it like, why didn't you reply back to me? At least tell me you could have taken it for 1,200, or at least tell me, no, you can't take it. Exactly. Like, it's that information that is going to help you figure out your segmentation with your carriers. It's because carriers are much like a sales pipeline too. Like, when you look at your carrier leads, you should be treating them just as any other like sales pipeline. For those that aren't in that sales side, look it up. It's great information in how to manage a sales pipeline and your lead lists and things like that. There's a ton of information out there, and it's transferable to logistics and this carrier logistics side. I think the other thing is, when you have that information, you're able to sort of look at which carriers should I be reaching out to. Like, for us, we use frequency as a measure to say, like, you should reach out to this carrier because they run it daily, rather than X carrier because they don't run it, at all, or they only run it once a week. Like, that's going to help you prioritize which opportunities you're going to start to work on. Then when you think of like, how is that me spending time working on that opportunity, that new load that came through, or new business, how is that going to benefit me, the company, the broker, but also the shipper and also the carrier, and trying to like combine all that stuff together. It's difficult to do, but I think like that's where some of the integrations, that you guys do, some of the features that you guys have, that's where it makes it easy. Like, that's what, you were talking about, making it easy. And that's one of the things that,
when we talk about this stuff, I always try to avoid like because I think that you can find ways to do this without necessarily having to spend a ton on software. But if you can afford it, I do think that software makes it a lot, like you guys, the way that you're set up makes it super easy to have those carriers identified and make sure they're getting first dibs on the loads that they want. Right. That makes it super nice and simple. We make it so that they can quote you through links. So it makes it a lot easier to see how many times you've been quoted by a certain carrier. So you may actually find that one time you posted a load for a lane on a load board and you actually got a carrier that quoted you who loves running that lane. And now they're just in your database. So the next time you need to reach out, you can email blast and they're just part of that email blast automatically. Like if you want it that way, right? If you set it up that way. So now you can keep sending it to them. And if they just continuously are the first one to quote you, right? You'll be able to see like, okay, like we have never onboarded this carrier, but they've quoted us 30 times in the last 2 weeks here on this particular, and we run this lane all the time. We've got a customer who we're always looking for more trucking companies on this lane. Wouldn't it be great to be able to see that and then to call them up and just make sure that they're, because you got them off the load board. You always want to verify, double check everything, but wouldn't you love to know who you should be doing that with, right? Like, and who you should be reaching out to and building a relationship with?
Yeah. That's sort of the like understanding those carrier needs and wants. It's a topic I think we're going to be talking about at the Broker Carrier Summit. Shameless plug there for that thing coming up here in it's April. My dates are all over the place now, but good conversations. It's really tough to understand that, and it's not easy to do, especially if you're working in that transactional world. And like Sean was saying, you don't have a place to like tally up all those quotes that you're getting from those carriers, or like what's your retention strategy? Like once you add a carrier to your pipeline, like what are you going to do next to make sure that guy is still getting load offers? And, options are great, but a quick race to the cheapest truck isn't always going to win you the business long-term. You got to think about like what's next. It might help you book that load right now, but if that's just a patch or a band-aid to that, then it's not really going to help you long-term. And it's just going to keep happening every time you get a load. And until you assess that problem, then it's just going to keep coming. And I think, when you're spending anywhere from, a lot of onboarding platforms, I don't know, 2 to 5 minutes to an hour, if you're not using an onboarding service, then like that time is just gone. And it's your team isn't there to help use these operational strategies to support your sales growth, to help you guys win more business. So it's a constant, revolving door, I guess is what you want to call it. But you got to figure out where Superman comes in and makes that thing spin really well. So I think another point, trying to keep your carriers coming back to you, like you were talking about with retention and carrier reuse. When they come in from a load board, most people will like, that's it. Like it'll just stop. And unless they're TMS or unless they have a software to help them with that, like retention strategy, it stops there. And it's your carriers, like, they'll probably quote you 30 times, like you said, and they keep coming back to you, but you're not coming back to them. And whether it's due to bandwidth, if it's raining today or you had a fall off or whatever it is, there's always an issue and a problem to where you can't get back to them. When your carrier sees that you're posting that load up for other carriers to take, starts to really create that void in the relationship where they're going to find somebody else who's going to want to come and work with them. And that's the same for like your shippers. Like, would you treat your shippers the same way? Like if they kept coming back to you, like, that's not what people would do. Right. And so it's an interesting thing when you try to think of like bridging that win-win-win for your broker, carrier, shipper, and everybody. It really starts to refine that process, I'd say. I guess, Sean, for you, want to kind of move along here. How do you view, like, what would motivate a carrier to keep coming back to them, and how can brokers sort of like, I don't know, use the TMS or just in general, how can they like create that win-win-win for all parties of that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that you can get real fancy with like different incentive programs and loyalty programs. But at the end of the day, if you present somebody some kind of program like that, but you're not repeating the use, just like you said, if they see you posting it on the load board, and it's like, hey, we had this long conversation about all the stuff we'll do for you. And, we were transparent, but I'm still seeing all your loads on the load board instead of coming directly to me. Right. So at the end of the day, you have to have it. You have to have a simple way to just keep going back to them and you said it a minute ago, like actually treating them just as important as a customer. I mean, as a broker, you deliver a very important service to the shipper by eliminating the headache altogether. It's not just about pricing. Like you just, and you don't always have good news for the shipper, but they appreciate that you're on it, right? Like, hey, bad news, that shipment's running late, but I'm in front of it. We're on top of it. And they're like, all right, bad news, but at least I got this broker that I really trust handling it for me, right? Should have that same level of trust with your carriers because you need them. You can't really provide a great service if you don't have go-to carriers for the lanes that you're running most frequently. So I think you can do things like I've seen all kinds of stuff. Like if you accept our tracking, you get a bump, right? If you're a really responsive carrier, there's like incentives for that. So if you're always giving us an update when we need it, you get bumped. I think all that stuff is great. And I think the transparency of that, like how do you make more money when you're working with us? Follow all these like very point blank, like this is really what we need. And if you're willing to do that, and some brokers will go so far as to say, like, if you're not letting us track, we won't work with you at all. But in a tight market right now, that's pretty feasible. Right. But in a tighter market, like you got to have relationships with folks that are, maybe they are a little bit mid-tier and you're teaching them how to become a top tier carrier with you. And if you're transparent with them and you tell them exactly what you need, a lot of them some of them will be a pain in the butt, of course, like that'll always be the case. But the ones that really want to earn your business and do a lot more work with you, they'll follow it if you're transparent. But then don't give them that list. And then, like we said, just post to the load board and not go back to them. Right. You got to give your team an easy way to go to identify that this has got to go to, Jimmy the trucking company or whatever. Right. That's got to go back to them.
Yeah. There's something that, back to what I mentioned earlier, a lot of customers using these operational strategies to build their revenue and expand that. There's another thing that I've heard that I've talked with a lot of brokers about, like how do they approach this with their shipper? Like it sounds a lot of the time like it's an operational task, but when you think of like your shippers are bidding on freight on a project just like you are. Like they're not just going to open the doors, ship one load and close. Like that's not what happens. So that oftentimes, like whether or not they're in charge of the consignee location or whatever, how long that project length is, there's freight going to and fro all the time. And even after that, like, especially in that flatbed world, I remember doing this, like we would have like, I think it was like Stone or something. And we would give them a rate and they'd have to send the raw materials to like a college or university. And it was a bid that they had to win before they could actually like give us the business as a broker. So it was like, when we went to them with $4,000, they had to, take that transportation cost into perspective to go and try to win the business. So they would quote, I don't know, $7,000 or whatever it would be on top of the raw materials and stuff. So it's like when you're going to them, let's say rewind last 30 days, there were probably opportunities that came to you guys that like, hey, I saw Joe, so I'm gonna pick on Joe. Hey, Joe, we can do this. What can you run this lane for? And you tell them $1,200 and you don't win the load. All right. So what happens next? A lot of times that's it. Like nobody's really taking that opportunity and building it and fostering it where that's just one load, one opportunity, and it's gone. But if you think back in what a lot of people did right at the beginning of COVID, they were trying to figure out how to replace their lost revenue. And what they did was like, I'll just use C4 as an example, but you could say a carrier list to go find like carriers that run these lanes, go back to their shipper, go back to that opportunity and say like, hey, I've got, I know we lost this last time, but now we can do it for $1,100 and we've got 10 carriers. They actually got legs to this thing. It's not just a rate. And they run this out of our Wisconsin location all the time. They're always going out to this territory or whatever it is. Then you're given that your shipper like more of something more tangible. And it's not just a bid. Like it's not just a rate to go win something. Because brokers do this. I mean, if it was let's say a tier 1 customer, like how much time and effort would you put into that customer, your marquee customer? What about your other ones? Like, why not do that same level of effort? Because you never know how many shipments that could come to. A lot of times it's like getting your foot in the door, but if you can't get there and you're not helping them realize the value that you bring, then they're just going to lose the business and move on to the next next
Right.
broker. And a lot of brokers are like, hey, just give me a chance, give me a chance. And I'll talk to them and say, all right, well, what are you doing to make that chance, like increasing that probability of that chance, right? And it's like nothing really. We're just giving them another rate. And okay, well, let's
Yeah,
try
it's not
to.
a differentiator. I mean, that's not the value, obviously, that if you talk to a lot of brokers, like they don't want to just be seen as like a broker, a rate for like when you need freight moved, right? They want to be seen as like we provide a full service here where you can trust us to handle all of your freight. That's the position you want to be in. And you want to be able to get more of an opportunity out of it. But if you think about it, like if you have trusted carriers that you can go to, you knock those opportunities out of the park, right? Because you know you can deliver on them, right? And you should always be talking to folks and putting out marketing content that allows you to bring in business you can knock it out of the park on based on your network, right? So if you beef up your network, you have more opportunities. But folks talk about the way that the margins work in the industry. Like I don't know how you could possibly raise your margins and book more shipments without having solid carriers that you work with regularly, because the only leverage you have is, hey, look how much business we're doing with you. We could do more. We could probably give you 30% more if you could be at this level, right? And then we're committing to that, so you get a higher margin, and they're taking better care of your your customers' freight. So it's like you were saying earlier, the win-win-win is it's that, like there's a concrete relationship across the board that the broker really manages. At a high level, they manage both sides of that.
Yeah. So let's take move along and say we have a process now, and we figured out like what motivation levers we need to pull for those carriers. What's next? And I think when you think about those first two building blocks, now you can really start to combine process with that motivation to really start winning more business. It's, this is where those integrations with powerful TMS like you guys comes into play to get this over the finish line. Because we've done a lot of I'd say panel discussions and webinars on like how to break the plateau. Like how do you, like you say you're doing 2,000 loads a month, your goal is to double in revenue. Like what are you going to do differently to get over that? Is it the same hustling and cold calling? Probably. If that's what your strategy is, then okay, that's fine. But there's a better way to book freight, and it doesn't just have to be like what it has been. So when you're refining your process, thinking about like that carrier first, that carrier centric, your customer first, your employee first, like everything's first, I guess, in this world, right? Every load needed to ship yesterday. So when you have like this mentality, it really, like, that's when you're going to start to see that load volume increase to get you to those goals. There's the old I guess adage is like, how do I get more freight on the board, lower the price for the shipper, but increase the price for the carrier? And that's where it comes to like the techniques, the software that you're adding, the time it takes to go do that stuff, like your cost per load. If you don't know what your cost per load is, a great exercise to look at. I know I've talked about it with a lot of our customers to figure out what their indirect cost per load is and your direct cost per load. Something you really need to look at, because if your margin is $200 on a load and your cost per load is 201, you're actually losing $1 every time you book a load. So it's thinking about some of those techniques that comes into play to help you scale your business. So I guess to pass back to you, Sean, what are some techniques that you've heard, I guess, from TIE users or that TIE itself can deliver to really help boost sales and that service level?
Well, I think it falls into exactly what you were explaining. I always tell people like it may sound tedious, but time your carrier rep on how they get a committed load, right?
Yeah.
How long does it take them to go through the whole process, right? And then apply that to how much the labor cost of that time is, right? I mean, I know it sounds tedious, but this is the kind of stuff I think that really good business owners do. They really they're not just like barking orders and saying, be more efficient. They're trying to be in the trenches and help their team find ways to be more efficient. So, one of the things we do is we just make it like the email integration is one of the things that has helped companies quite a bit, because you're just pulling the order in, eliminating data entry, and then if it is a committed shipment, we integrate with products like yours where you could kick it right over to Cargo Chief, and then you're working on the load coverage part of it. But even if you do need to go a level deeper, the email integration works both ways, for the, pushing email blasts out to the carriers and making it easy for them to quote you on it. So it's super easy in Thai. And if you don't like, I don't want this to become a Thai sales pitch, but it's super easy in Thai to see who your top 5 carriers are on that lane because they're starred and there's a rating system for them. So like there is opportunity. You can be really clear with the carriers about like, if you want to work your way up the ranking, this is what we look for. This is how we rate carriers. So now all of a sudden, if you're a 5-star carrier giving me a good rate, then like it's an immediate. And if I want to get it covered really fast, I have that right at the top of the screen. I can compare what you're quoting me to other rate intelligence, right from the same page. And that's the other thing that can piss carriers off too, is if you call them and you're trying to, like, you're wasting their time if you're not even close on what you're asking them to do it for, right? Like that's a great way to ruin a relationship, is constantly call them and go, can you do it for way less than what it would actually even cost you in gas, right? Or whatever, right? So stuff like that, you have to have full visibility of all that. So there's other ways I'm sure you could go about it, but I do think that you need to be able to, if you go to a carrier rep that you're trying to train and they're a hustler, they're doing a good job, they're willing to get on the phone, they're doing everything you want them to do. But if you have visibility to be able to say, hey, why did you post that one on the load board instead of going to, these carriers? If they were able to pull it up on one screen and go, well, look, I did email blast it out to those top 5 carriers, but the quotes are pretty high compared to what maybe Green Screens is telling me, or, or my average on that lane. So I posted it. And then we got a carrier that did it for a better price. And then it becomes like a, hey, great thought process, right? Like you get to confirm that they're actually following. But if you give a carrier rep a stressful environment, like it's a stressful job, so if you make it so they gotta go to like 4 different websites and and they gotta be in their email and then they gotta be doing all the data entry, and you walk up to them and go, hey, why did you post that on the load board? You're gonna get a lot of like, you're just stressing them out more because you didn't give them an easy way to do what you wanted them to do. You barked orders and then made them go through, like, jump through a bunch of hoops to do what you need. And at the end of the day, they're going to look at you and go, look, man, the load's covered, and it's like, don't give them such a rough day, make it simple.
Yeah. Let's talk about ways to ruin the relationship. No, just kidding. But I do kind of want to point something out there, because as much time as it takes to give a good rate, it takes just as much time to give a bad rate. And it's like, part of the process that we look at for a lot of our customers, when we don't see the engagement rates that we dictate as success, 40 to 50% engagement from carriers on your loads, it's one of the things that we look at is like, well, what rating strategy are you using? Because you can automate that stuff too, to where it's like, maybe it took 2-3 minutes to say, I'm going to start at $600 below market. That's just going to cause a carrier to come back and say, like, lose my number, or like, don't call me again, or unsubscribe me. Like, what? Oh, you want me to take this for free? Like, I've seen some pretty aggressive emails, and it's real. And that day-to-day communication can make it stressful too. And it's just like, how are, if you're a manager or you're leading the team and you're telling your team, like, what was that thought process? How can you make their day just a little bit easier by like helping with some automation or supporting what their task is with some automation to still act as if it's like coming from a human, but still a favorable rate for all parties? It's because the worst thing is like spend 5 minutes just to figure out like you're under quoting or over quoting, or you're missing the mark essentially. And that's like, it's not good for anybody. It creates a more taxing situation.
It's also how you lose good reps within your brokerage. Because if you're telling them like, hey, get it done for some ridiculous target rate that doesn't make any sense, and then they're forced to jump on the phone and they know what kind of feedback they're getting from the carriers, right? And if you don't give them an easy way to kind of make the case for why, because you use the same rating information to have that conversation with the shipper if you have to, right? Or your customer, you can logically lay out why it costs that. And if you give your team the tools to be confident in terms of rating, like if you can see your average on that lane and you've run it 1,000 times in the last, month or whatever it is, then you compare that to rate intelligence on the market. You can call up your customer and say, hey, I know we usually run this for about this, but unfortunately right now it's going for about $100 higher. So I gotta, hope that, and then at least you get to go have a real conversation with carriers instead of just trying to squeeze the carrier. right? Because I think that tends to be like, don't want to make the customer mad. Let's go figure out how to squeeze a little bit more out of the carrier. And it's just not a good recipe for long-term success.
Yeah. And even like I've seen some pretty creative strategies here in the last couple of years. I truthfully, I wish I knew all that stuff when I was booking freight, because it would have made my pocket a lot happier, I would say. But one of those things is like, how do you come back to a shipper? Like I've seen some people, they'll group their carriers, and this sort of wraps up this conversation, how to keep carriers coming back to drive that carrier use. And Tony, I see your question there. So it sort of is addressing that. He asked if we can talk about how to build your carrier pool so when you get loads, you actually have carriers.
Yep. Great
now,
question.
Like it, I had a list that I was going to go through, but I'm going to hit that one first because it ties in with this really well. When you keep carriers in rotation and you have we have a feature called Waterfalls that is assigned to our projects that helps you like organize your carriers when you're, going to reach out to them or whatever it is. But when you have like your group one as, maybe it's price, and that range is like $500 to $800. Maybe group two is like $800 to $1,200. Then group three is like all about service, and it's going to be really high price. Like some of those things that when you're going back to your shipper, like giving them the range or an option. Like as long as you've got options, that's the worst thing to have is rather not an option, not having an option, because you're just going to end up turning down the load, which no one can afford to turn down an opportunity these days, or it's going to roll. But if you have like hey, I've got this group of carriers that 3 to 5 that can run it at X price. This is the service expectation, or this is the expectation of what to get from this pool. We have, guaranteed pretty much that can get it done here this day. Like you're going to set that expectation for your shipper that in no way are you going to fail. Like there is a guarantee that you can take it. It's just like, how do we find common ground with the carrier pool that we've got? So sort of, Tony, to address that, it starts kind of the other way. Like when you have like your loads, when you're trying to acquire business, you've got opportunities. That's not actually a load yet. It's when you think of the sales pipeline, it's top of the funnel. How are you strengthening that to increase your win rate to make sure that you get that freight and get it on the board? So it's like using your carriers to refine the rate that you're going to give for that quote to when you do finally have that load. Now you've got your carrier pool. On the flip side, though, if you've already got your freight, it starts with your current carrier base. Like a lot of times people have a good calculations. Like if you do 500 loads a month, you probably have like 3,000 or so carriers in your TMS. Now the coverage that is probably pretty slim. You probably only know like your top 2 to 3 carriers every lane, and you're not doing anything to really drive carrier reuse. Sorry, after you actually get that freight on the board. So it's like understanding your carrier footprint today first. Which lanes they run, how often are they even a good fit for you in this case and point. Then figuring out like how can I expand beyond that. So it comes down to process, organization, and how can you motivate those carriers to come back to you.
Yeah.
John, I don't know if you have any comments.
Well, yeah, I do. I think, Tony, just to answer your question specifically, because if you're coming from a place of like, I have nothing, right? And that's where I was saying earlier that we're lucky as an industry that the load boards exist and you can post, right? But when you don't have any network, a couple key tips, I would say it's not that expensive to buy a list of every trucking company that's registered with the FMCSA in the entire country and separate it by state. You probably get that entire list for like $1,000, right? And if you like, and I'll just use us as an example, but if you were to load that into, you separate it by state and load it into TIE with at least just their home regions, then when you get a lane that's coming out of that state or whatever, right? Like you could blast out the email from TIE, and then as they all quote you, you're saving that data. Same thing with the load boards. If you have to post to the load boards, it kind of is what it is. Like if it's a new lane for you, or maybe you're a relatively new carrier rep or new broker, you post to the load boards. The mistake is not capturing all of the quotes that you got when you posted, right? Because let's say you post and you get about 10 quotes. oftentimes the only one you really know about in terms of your data and your record in your TMS is the one that you actually booked with. So it's a mistake to only capture that one when you had 10 quotes from viable carriers that you could have used. So what you want to be able to do is record all 10 quotes and have an easy way to see that. Because the next time I come back to that lane, what I want to be able to do is email blast those 10 right away. Like, hey, you quoted me last time. I'd love to give you another shot. And then if you start to see consistency, and then do that and post, right? So give those guys a first shot at a second attempt, and then also post and continue to gather all of the data. Now, if you make that hard though, I don't know how folks like would sift through their entire inbox, and then I don't know how you're going to require your whole team to just like write it on a list. Like, it's going to end up living in somebody's notebook. It's going to be somewhat unorganized, right? So you got to find an easy way to record all that, and that's the repeat use. I think that's the best way to start if you're starting from scratch. Get yourself a list that you can email blast, post to the load boards, but have a way to capture every single quote. If you don't have that, it's going to be really challenging.
Yeah, it's like staying in constant communication with those carriers too. If you're not, sort of what we mentioned earlier, it's going to create that void in the relationship, and they're going to go find somebody else who is willing to go do that, or somebody who has the technology to help them with that, because it's very, very time consuming. And I think even when you get a load that hits the board. In my time when I was booking freight, I'd call a guy at 10 a.m. and he was like, Chris, if you just called me at 3 o'clock yesterday, I had a truck for you. But, whatever, it doesn't do me any good now, but whatever reason, I didn't get a chance to. And I knew I should have, but, had other fires to put out or whatever it was. And if you've got something to help you, reach out to those carriers proactively. That's going to lead to a better and tighter relationship. I think too, Sean, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, if you like these little personal touch things, right? It's a relationship-based business. If you were to, in that scenario I gave you where you get 10 quotes and you end up going with one of them, but you captured the other 10, right? And you have an easy way to see that, you could actually email or set up a process to email those other 9 carriers and let them know, maybe what the price was that you did book it. Like, hey, we appreciate you being willing to quote us. We'll keep you in mind on this lane. Like, those little personal touch things make them want to come back. Like, I mean, you can't underestimate what just showing respect to a carrier will do for your carrier network, because we can incentivize all day, but showing them respect and thanking them and being gracious, and then actually coming back to them with another opportunity and telling them kind of where they need to be, right? That shows a high level of respect for your carrier network. And if you do that, they'll want to work with you. That's just human nature.
Yeah, Sean, that's a good point. There was, through my time, I've probably only met like maybe 2 or 3 of my carriers, and I've booked a lot of freight. And like the problem is, like, a lot of the people on the floor don't, they're not at a carrier conference, or there aren't like natural meeting places for them to connect and just have a business conversation. When you think of like that personal touch, there's, one thing we've said before in a couple other sessions in the past, that like one thing that everyone has these days that they didn't before is one of these. And like, how many times does your carrier see you? Like, that's probably often on the phone or an email. Like, just a quick, like, after they deliver that load, whatever, the outcome was, if it was they're late or whatever, just like that small appreciation of like, take a quick video. It's super easy to send. You probably already have their cell phone, and just like, hey man, great job on this load. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to kind of give you a thanks video or something, and send it off 15 seconds. And like,
and even if they don't like getting phone calls or whatever, you know what I mean? If they're a little, like, you send them a text that's like, hey, you checked every single box on this load in terms of your responsiveness. Like, I'm going to make sure we record you as a top tier carrier based on this, or I'm going to, whatever you want to, but you just let them know, and it's, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. I used to, wrap up my, calls with like, hey man, I'm here. I'm here. If you ever need anything, drive safe. Like, I'll always be here. And like, that went such a long way that people would stop and like really thank me that I took the 3 seconds to say that. Like, it's really incredible how far that can go, and how much people get caught up in a transaction. Cause it's like, that's what's going to help you build those relationships. I think, another thing is finding out how they want to book freight. Like, if they love using their phone and their cell phone, you just text them like, hey, can you move 10 loads? I got these coming up. If they like to do that and it's not hard for you, sure, why not? Not every carrier is going to be like that, but if they like, to try to go to, like, if you have a book now board or something and they like to do that, figure out which carriers do, set those aside and work on those with a different strategy. Now you're talking about, like, it's usually going to be like your marquee carriers probably that want that ease of booking, to where it's not, hey, calling me every time you have this load, giving them a way to just click a button to book that load, to get assigned. So now your conversations can shift from, hey, I saw you guys have like 200 trucks, you have like 200 lanes. We can actually start doing like $500,000 in revenue. This is how we can do this together. And it's a lot easier than what we're doing now. So it's the conversation transforms from just that transactional model to,
Chris, I lost your sound. I don't know if you can. Okay. Well, I'll kind of keep going. But I think one of the takeaways that I got from talking to a lot of brokers is identifying the process first and foremost, like, because that's what I was saying on the front end, identifying the process. But if you know what you're looking for in a carrier and you know, like, sort of your parameters and I think that tends to be sometimes the part that people don't want to do. It's a little extra work and it's a little tedious to write up a process for how we're going to rate these carriers and what we're going to base the rating on. And so, like, if you know that information and everybody across the board knows it and a carrier checks all boxes, like, it's kind of a nice thing to let them know. And maybe even if they only check a handful of them, you still let them know and you try to encourage the positive behavior. And then if you can afford to create an incentive program where if they do check all boxes, I think we got you back, Chris. Are you?
I think so.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, this thing dies out on me sometimes.
Yeah, that's all right. But again, like, just knowing what you actually want and being willing to, like, we use for our processes internally at TIE, we use a program called Miro, which is just like a flow chart, and it like, I don't think enough people, just because the concepts may be super simple in your head, but if you lay it out nice and clear for everybody and you actually go over it with them, I think this is the difference between businesses that operate at a really high level and the ones that are, doing it. Because you can enter our industry with a lot of hustle and you can do pretty good. You can make money and you can feel like, and if that's all you want to do, hey, more power to you. But if you're trying to create a business model that is scalable and makes it, allows you to grow, these little things you have to pay attention to. You have to have a process for, we know who we want to work with on the trucking company side, and this is how we're going to reach out to them, and this is how we're going to base the rating system on them, and then we're going to be really transparent with them, and we're going to talk to them about where the pricing needs to be. And the more business you're doing with a trucking company, the better your scalability really is, because if you can go find more for them, your margins will be better. If you're in a pinch, you can actually call them and go, hey, I really need a favor. We'll figure out the money later, but I need you to go pick up this shipment as soon as you can. Right. And for them to be able to say yes, because you do so much business with them, I mean, that's very realistic. I've heard stories like that where you do so much business that they have that level of loyalty for you.
Yeah, and it's more options often leads to more volume. And if you're trying to incentivize your carrier, like, what are the more options that you can give them to give them more volume? Like, it's both ways. Like, all people in this, scenario, brokers, carriers, shippers are looking at the same thing, but it takes somebody to think of that common goal in order to make that mission come to life. Yeah. I think, as we sort of conclude here and step back and think of, kind of recap, it was, identification, process, strategy to find those carriers. Like, what are you guys doing today? And just to look back at the question that we put in earlier, what does your process look like today? Do you even have one to identify carriers? Can it be better? Maybe. Think about some of those things that you're doing today to help support your sales growth, because that's what it's going to come back to. Also, understanding your carrier's needs and wants, but also your shippers, and how can you help them, help your people, help your carriers win in this market. Then finally coming up to like, carrier reuse, like what's your retention strategy after you spend all that time identifying them, putting the process together? Now what are you going to do? Is it repeatable? Is it scalable? Can you see that getting you to that next 500 loads a month, 2,000 loads a month, tripling in revenue, or whatever goal it is? Everything should be working towards that.
Yeah. The market, the market's challenging, right? But I think that the really good seasoned brokers that have seen the cycles, right, and they've lived through these cycles before. A lot of them, what I see is they use this time to do exactly what we're talking about. Really dig into the process. And I can't control the market, right? So what can I control? I can control being really, really prepared for when it turns the other way, right? Like I can find efficiencies. I can work on these relationships now while I have time, because otherwise, some people get caught up in like the toxic productivity where I'm just going to go be busy to be like, you're stuck just like making calls and doing things that really aren't going to help, rather than refining what the process looks like, finding areas to save time, because then when the market does turn, you're super efficient, right? Like we did a webinar with Freight Saver a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how when they adopted the full process of our truckload quoting page, they doubled their shipment volume per rep per day. So they went from doing about 7 loads a day per carrier rep to 14, and they increased their margin at the same time. But it was because they were doing so much repeat use with the same carriers, just because they had visibility on it.
Yeah, that's great customer too. They're one that sort of layers on the digital strategies. I would say. I think we talked to Ryan in our Game Changers event. He was talking about like, because he has a couple other tools, like all of those together increase their digital bookings because it's all together. It's not just thinking of one off. Is it this one or that one? It doesn't have to be a choice. Like whatever your goal is, if it's digital bookings and visibility, then think of it like that, and not just like it's this or the other.
Yeah. He's a good example of an adopter where he sees the value in, he measures it, right? So he's using your product, he's using ours, and he's actually paying attention to the value he gets out of those tools, right? And so, he's a smart. They're a very well run organization, and I'm sure they would ditch us if we weren't able to help them, right? Because they're smart. They know that like anything they're spending money on has to deliver, and I think that's why they're using both of us. So,
absolutely. No, that's pretty much it, Sean. I appreciate you joining us today, man. And we've got a lot of great conversations coming up where, for those that are going to be at, the TIA event, Sean and I will be there. That's April also. And, lots of good conferences coming up, the TIA show, the Broker Carrier Summit. I think we plugged in a link there. So if you guys want to check out more about the BCS, it's in Kansas City. Go check it out.
Yep. In Arizona, we actually were doing a happy hour together with Green Screen. So Cargo Chief, Green Screens, and Ty hosting a happy hour while we're there. And I'm sure we'll be all over the place at the show. And that's on the 10th. So that's coming up real quickly here.
Yeah. You can't say no to free drinks. So there's that. Now, everyone, I appreciate you guys joining. And if there's a question that you guys want to ask, feel free to reach out to us. Here's a couple of ways you can reach out to us. You can check us out at cargochief.com or go to Ty. Oh man, that text is too small. What's your website? TySoftware.com. There we go. Go check them out if you're looking for a good TMS, a powerful system that can integrate everything together. That's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for joining us, and y'all have a great week.